Dragon Master's Curse of the Shadow Dragons.
Good job, Talia. And that was our guest kiddo, Talia, on Apollo Reads. And now we're going to find book 22. Oh, this is by Tracey West, by the way. This is book 22, right, Apollo? Oh, no, 23, huh? We did 22 last night. And so, or the night before, or I don't know. I don't remember when, but we did it. And so let's find out what happens in book 23, shall we? Chapter 1, The Strange Shadow. Oh, yeah, remember in book 22, he came back to Bracken and went out, and it was like that shadow creeping in? That's what we're on. Ready? The Strange Shadow. Drake and his earth dragon Worm stood in the Valley of the Clouds. The wide green space was tucked between King Roland's castle and some tall hills. As Drake had hoped, Griffith, the wizard, was waiting for them there. So were his fellow dragon masters, Bo, Rory, and Anna. They had all planned to meet up for a picnic. But the wizard and dragon masters did not greet Drake and Worm. They all stared up at the sky, frowning. A strange black shadow was creeping across the bright blue sky. "Is it nighttime already?" Drake asked, puzzled. "Those don't look like storm clouds." Drake's dragonstone glowed as he heard Worm's voice inside his head. "It is not night. It is not a storm," Worm replied. "Something bad is coming." Drake gasped. "Griffith! Worm says that something bad is coming." The wizard nodded. "I can feel it in my bones. Powerful magic is making this shadow." "Anna, Bo, let's go get out our dragons," cried Rory, her green eyes shining. "We can fly up there for a closer look." Anna shuddered. "I don't want to get a closer. There's something really weird about that shadow." "Griffith, what should we do?" Bo asked. The wizard stroked his long white beard. "Let me consult my gazing ball. I think everyone then turned at the sound of galloping hooves. King Roland the Bold rode toward them on a chestnut-colored horse. The king was a big man with red hair, a bushy beard, and a tunic with a dragon symbol on it. Dirt sprayed up as he brought his horse to a stop. "Wizard, what is happening to the sky?" he asked in his booming voice. "My kingdom is in a panic." Before Griffith could answer, a bright light shone from above. Drake shielded his eyes. A silver dragon flew down, ridden by a girl wearing a green dragon stone. "Jean!" Drake called out. The girl climbed down from her dragon. Her metal armor was clinking. A sword was tucked into her belt. "Friends, I need your help," Jean cried. Chapter 2, Something is Wrong. "What brings you here, Dragon Master?" King Roland asked Jean. "Who are you, and where are you from?" "I am Jean, a Dragon Master from the land of Gallia," she replied with a bow. "And this is my dragon, Argent." Drake stepped forward. "Your Majesty, Jean helped us save the world from the Naga." King Roland raised an eyebrow. "That earthquake-making dragon? Then I indeed owe you a debt, and I will always aid Gallia, our neighboring land. What help do you need?" "This shadow is covering our kingdom, too," Jean replied. "Our villagers are afraid. King Leon sent me here to ask if you will help us fight it." King Roland frowned and gazed at the sky. "I fear I do not know how to battle a shadow." Bo turned to Jean. "Did you get close to the shadow when you flew here?" "We flew under it the whole way," Jean replied. "But Argent did not fly into it. He told me it was evil." "Griffith, you said that your gazing ball might tell us where the shadow came from," Rory reminded him. Griffith nodded. Yes, he replied, snapping his fingers. Normally, his gazing ball would appear in his palm, but instead, poof! A ball of blue yarn popped into his hand. Oh, that's weird. "This is no time for jokes, wizard," King Roland snapped. "This is not a joke, sire," Griffith replied. "Just a silly mistake." The wizard narrowed his blue eyes in concentration and snapped his fingers again. Poof! A large soap bubble floated above his palm. King Roland glared at him, and Griffith popped the bubble. Then the wizard tried again. Poof! A smooth wooden ball rested in his hand. Drake frowned. I've seen Griffith do a lot of magic, but he's never failed before. He thought, something is very, very wrong. Chapter 3. The Shadow Dragon. The wizard frowned. I'm not sure what is happening. Let us go to my workshop, where I can look for answers, Griffith said. A royal guard galloped into the valley. Sire, angry villagers are surrounding the castle, he announced. Humph! King Roland huffed. Any time something out of the ordinary happens, the villagers storm the castle. I'll deal with them. He glared at Griffith. And you, wizard, will solve this problem before things get out of hand. Griffith bowed. Yes, your majesty. King Roland and the guard rode off. Drake and the others walked toward the castle. It's nice to finally meet you, Anna told Jean. I'm Anna. Nice to meet you, too, Jean replied. She turned to Drake. Where is the silver sword I gave you? I don't usually carry it with me, Drake admitted. I need that sword fighting lesson you promised me. They all traveled through the long tunnel that led to the Dragon Master's training room. Wait here while we go into Griffith's workshop, Drake told Worm and Jean, and Jean then told Argent the same. Inside the wizard's workshop, the shelves were filled with jars of liquid herbs and spell ingredients. Griffith walked to a large, clear glass ball and waved a hand over it. Magical light sparkled inside the ball, and a scene appeared. A gray dragon stood on top of a temple with many towers. The dragon had 2 curved tusks and a long nose. The dragon reminds me of an elephant I saw once, Drake thought. The dragon's trunk-like nose pointed up, and a dark shadow streamed out of it and into the sky. Next to the dragon stood a girl wearing a green glowing dragonstone. She looked to be 8 years old, but her long braided hair was gray. Her eyes, as well as the dragon's eyes, shone with red light. A shadow dragon! Griffith cried. But a shadow dragon shouldn't be able to create such a massive sky shadow. The dragon's powers must be supercharged somehow. Look, the eyes of the dragon and the Dragon Master are glowing red, Rory pointed out. Red is the color of evil magic, Drake added. Griffith, where is this shadow dragon? Do you recognize the temple? Before Griffith could answer, the light inside the gazing ball fizzled and popped. Then it went dark. It was what I feared, Griffith said. My magic is not working, and this shadow dragon has something to do with it. Chapter 4. Mixed Up Magic. Could other wizards be having trouble with their magic too? Drake asked Griffith. Griffith nodded. I fear that this shadow may be affecting all wizard magic. Maybe Gianna, the head wizard, can help, Anna said. She might know what's happening. Excellent idea, Anna, Griffith said. Drake, can you and Worm please transport to Belluron to speak with Gianna right away? Jean spoke up. Argent and I will go, too, and you should bring your sword, Drake. Good idea, Drake replied. Off with you two, then. The wizard commanded. Rory, Bo, and Anna, we shall go help King Roland calm the villagers. Jean is strong and smart, Drake thought as he ran to his room. I'm glad she is coming with us. Minutes later, he met Jean in the training room with his silver sword tucked into his belt. Drake and Jean each put a hand on Worm. Jean put her other hand on Argent. Worm, please take us to the castle of the wizards in Belluron, Drake cried. Worm's body glowed, and Drake's stomach flip-flopped as they instantly transported to the castle. It sat on the edge of a cliff overlooking the sea. The weird shadow was creeping across the sky here, too. They had landed outside the castle entrance. The door were open and unguarded. That's odd, Drake said. Let's see what's going on. Dragons aren't usually allowed inside, but we might need them." Drake and Jean entered the castle, followed by Worm and Argent. On a regular day, young wizards from all around the world would be in their classrooms learning magic. But instead, the hallways were filled with young wizards performing magic, or trying to. A few wizards were walking on the ceiling. Several of them had sprouted unicorn horns. I know, that's strange. "Muzzle pop!" shouted a student next to Drake, and she waved her hand at a classmate. Stuck to the ceiling, the boy turned into a bird and flew away. "Uh-oh," Drake said. Then the head wizard marched down the hall, wearing an orange dress with fabric draped over her shoulder. "Everyone must stop performing magic now," Gianna commanded. The students all stopped what they were doing. Gianna approached Drake and Jean. "Drake, I assume you have come about the sky shadow," she said. "Who is your friend?" "I am Jean from the land of Gallia, and this is my dragon Argent," Jean said. "And your dragon powers are working?" Gianna asked. Drake nodded. "Yes, Worm transported us here." "Good," Gianna said. "Then all is not lost." "We came because Griffith saw a shadow dragon in his gazing ball. He thinks the sky shadow is somehow connected to the dragon, and to the mixed-up magic," Drake explained. So Griffith's magic isn't working either," she replied. "Interesting." "Do you know what's happening?" Jean asked. "I have seen this dragon in my gazing ball too," Gianna explained. "I recognize the temple of the shadow dragon in Synu, the land of my birth. You both must go there with no wizard magic. Dragons are the only ones who can stop the shadow dragon." Chapter 5. Darpan. Jean and I will head to Synu right away," Drake told the head wizard. "Can you message Griffith for us?" "Yes. Our magic may not work, but our pigeons still do," Gianna replied. "I will tell Griffith where you are going." "Great," Drake said, and he and Jean got ready to transport. "Worm, take us to the temple of the shadow dragon in Synu." They transported in a flash of green light. Drake blinked. Here, the strange shadow completely covered the sky. In the near distance, Drake could make out the temple and the shadow dragon. They had landed in a village. 1- and 2-story buildings lined the streets they were on, but all the doors and shutters were closed. "Where is everybody?" Drake wondered. "Maybe they're afraid of the shadow," Jean replied. Then she pointed down the road. "Look, there's a bright light in the building." The dragon masters and their dragons made their way toward the small building at the end of the road. When they reached the door, which was partly open, Drake noticed stars and moons carved into the wood. "Is this a wizard's house?" he guessed. Jean knocked on the door. "Hello, is someone home? Is someone here?" "Come in," a voice called from inside. Drake turned to the dragons. "You two wait here." The dragon master stepped into the house right away. And right away Drake knew his guess had been right. The place was filled with shelves of books, jars, and plants. A young dark-haired boy stood by the desk. The boy eyed the dragon master's swords. "Are you soldiers?" "If you've come about the sky shadow, it's no use," he said. "I'm Jean, and this is Drake," Jean explained. "We're dragon masters, and we've come from a far away to try and stop the shadow dragon. What do you know about it?" "Well, the dragon's name is Chia, and his dragon master is my sister, Aruna." "I'm Darpan," the boy replied, and a sad look crossed his face. But like I said, there is no way to stop Chia. King Vikram's army tried and failed. I even tried to reason with Aruna, but she wouldn't listen." "Is there a wizard we could speak with? Maybe the one who lives here?" Drake asks. "Aruna's wizard disappeared around the same time that Chia began to create the sky shadow," Darpan continued. "I came here to get to his home, looking for answers." All I know is that something terrible has happened to my sister and to Chia. Jean and I might be able to help more than you think, Drake said. Come outside. Darpan followed Drake and Jean. His eyes widened when he saw Worm and Argent. Dragons, of course, Darpan said. There may be hope after all. Chapter 6. A Gentle Dragon. Tell us what happened to Aruna and Chia, Jean said. Darpan nodded. The change in them both came suddenly, he began. My sister is 8 years old, only 2 years younger than I. She was always a smart, kind girl. Drake thought of the red eyes of the girl in Griffith's gazing ball and shivered. Her eyes did not look kind at all. I was so happy when she became a dragon master, Darpan continued. I knew she would be great at it, and she was. Aruna moved into the temple of the Shadow Dragon to train with Chia. But they had a strong connection from the start. Did Chia do something to change your sister? Jean asked. Darpan shook his head. No, Chia was sweet and gentle. He would cast shadows to cool down the villagers, harvesting their crops in the hot sun. And he never left Aruna's side. She would always say, Chia follows me around like a shadow. That is very sweet, Drake remarked. Yes, but now they are both so different, Darpan said. They have become very strange and evil. We notice their eyes are red, Drake said. Could they have been cursed? Darpan nodded. All I know for sure is that one day the sky shadow began to flow from Chia's nose. It has reached our lands, Jean told him. Darpan gazed at the sky, and the world cannot survive this sky shadow. Plants will die. People will starve. Drake looked at Jean and knew they were thinking the same thing. Jean and I will go to the temple, Drake said. My dragon Worm can try to communicate with Chia. If we find out what happened, maybe we can fix it. That is a good plan, Darpan replied. I will keep looking for the answers here. Drake, Jean, and their dragons walked through the village to the temple steps. Drake pointed to the top of the temple. Worm, try to communicate with Chia, he said. Then he heard Worm's voice inside his head. No time. The shadow dragon flew down from the roof, flapping his feathered wings. He had stopped making the sky shadow, but it still hung overhead. Aruna rode on Shia's back. The eyes of the girl and the dragon blazed red. Stand back, attackers! Aruna yelled. Chapter 7. Aruna. Chia, the shadow dragon, landed near the temple steps. Aruna jumped off his back and eyed Drake and Jean's dragon stones. Leave now, dragon masters, she said firmly, or we will be forced to battle you. Jean's hand tightened on her sword, sensing danger. Argent's scales flashed silver. Drake stepped forward. We are not here to battle, he said. We just want to talk. Aruna's red eyes flashed. There is nothing to talk about. Drake quickly sent a thought to Worm's mind. Worm, try to communicate with Chia. Jean and I will work on Aruna. Because you are dragon masters, I will give you a chance to escape, Aruna continued. But I am losing patience. Aruna, we know something is wrong with you both, Jean blurted out. Ha! Aruna scoffed. She glared at Jean. There is nothing wrong with us. Everything is going right. Chia's beautiful shadow will soon cover the world. Don't you see how dangerous that is? Drake asked. If the sky shadow blocks out the sun, no crops will grow. People will starve. It will be just like your brother Darpan has told us. Darpan? The red flickered in Aruna's eyes. For a split second, Drake saw the eyes behind the evil energy. Eyes that were brown and kind. Is she fighting the evil inside her? Drake wondered. Yes, your brother Darpan. He is very worried about you, Drake said. Then he heard Worm's voice in his head. I cannot communicate with Chia. There is a cloud of evil magic blocking his thoughts. Just then Aruna's dragonstone glowed, and her red eyes flashed brightly once again. "Your brown dragon is a spy!" she cried. "He tried to sneak into Chia's mind." "No, Worm was only trying to communicate with Chia," Drake protested. "Please listen," Jean pleaded. "We can help you and Chia." "Enough," Aruna said. "I gave you a chance to flee, and you didn't take it." Her dragonstone glowed as she gave her shadow dragon a command. "Chia, release the shadow phantoms!" Chapter 8. The Shadow Phantoms. The shadow dragon reared back his head. Drake tensed. What is Chia going to do? He wondered. A low humming noise came from the dragon as a wispy shadows flowed from his mouth. The shadows quickly took shape into creatures with arms, yellow eyes, and creepy mouths. Drake and Jean sprang into action. "Worm, freeze those shadow phantoms!" Drake yelled. "Argent, use your shine!" cried Jean. The phantoms zoomed forward, extending their wispy arms. Drake felt a cold chill as they got closer. Worm closed his eyes, and green light spread across his body as he concentrated on freezing the phantoms. Then he shook his head. "I can't freeze them," he told Drake. Suddenly, Argent let out a piercing shriek. He started to flap his wings. A bright silver shine flowed from Argent's wings, pushing back the creatures. Drake had seen Argent's shine power before. He could reflect any dragon's attack. Now the shadow phantoms slammed back into Chia, but the dragon simply gobbled them up again. A burst of red light shot from his eyes. "Fools!" Aruna cried with a wicked grin. "You have only made Chia more powerful." "Our dragon's powers aren't working against Chia," Drake thought. "What can we do?" There was no time for a backup plan. Chia flew toward them. He flapped his wings, and a thick black shadow moved toward Drake, Jean, Worm, and Argent. Goosebumps popped up on Drake's arms as he felt a cold chill again. The black shadow transformed into an eerie gray fog. When the fog lifted, Drake, Jean, and their dragons were no longer on the temple steps. They were in some kind of desert, and everything around them looked gray. The sand and the sky were gray, and there were no buildings, only strange gray plants. Then Drake heard a voice behind them. "Welcome to the Shadow Realm." Chapter 9. The Wizard's Tale. Drake, Jean, Worm, and Argent saw a man with a gray beard and gray eyes. In fact, his whole body was gray and sort of see-through. Jean drew her sword and marched toward him. "Who are you, and what is this place?" she asked. The man shook his head as if walking from a dream. "The Shadow Realm is a world created by Chia and the Shadow Dragon," he replied. "It is a prison from which no one can." His voice trailed off, and he started to walk away. Drake jogged after him. "Did Chia send you here too?" he asked. The man blinked. "Oh yes, sorry, I am Vanad, Aruna's wizard." "What has happened to Aruna and Chia is my fault." "Tell us what happened," Jean said, lowering her sword. "I will show you," Vanad said. He held up a finger. "I have a little magic left." He drew a circle in the air, and a faint light shimmered inside it. An image appeared, a golden flower with a red jewel on its center. "I come from a long line of wizards," Vanad began. As he spoke, his body flickered briefly, like a candle flame. 1,000 years ago, one of my ancestors discovered the sprout of a Balaam flower. Every 1,000 years, this special flower produces one seed. In the image, the red jewel opened up to reveal a red seed. "The seed gives great power to the one who eats it," Vanad continued. "And every time a wizard uses magic, the Balaam seed absorbs their power. The seed will keep absorbing power until all wizards lose their magic." Drake gasped. So whoever eats the seed would have all the magic in the world and nobody else would have any? Vinod stared at the flower. I knew that the red jewel would open up during my lifetime. I counted down the days until I could be all-powerful. I told myself that I would do good things for the world, and while I waited for the seed, a dragon master came to train with me. An image of Aruna appeared. Her hair was black, not gray, and her eyes were brown, as Drake had briefly seen. Aruna was a good student. We had happy times working together, Vinod said. But soon I became distracted by the flower. I was eager for the seed to appear. I sat by the flower for hours, then days. I did not eat. Aruna must have been worried about you, Drake remembered and remarked. Vinod nodded. She was, and she knew something that I did not. No one should eat the Balaam seed. Too much power is dangerous and tempting. Aruna believed that such a seed had to be a tool of evil magic, that the power would curse whoever ate the seed. The golden flower appeared again, and its red center glowed brightly. Aruna tried to talk me out of eating the seed, but I would not listen. Becoming all-powerful was all I could think about, Vinod said. And then, when the jewel opened, Aruna did something very brave and very foolish. A new scene played out inside the magic circle. The red jewel opened up, revealing the seed. Vinod reached for it, but Aruna's smaller hand grabbed it first. Vinod howled in anger as Aruna fed the seed to Chia. Chapter 10. We're doomed. As the wizard's magic circle of light faded, Jean gasped. Aruna fed the Balaam seed to Chia. Yes, Aruna believed that the seed's power would not work on dragons, only humans, Vinod said. But the seed did work on Chia in a surprising way. The seed is supercharging Chia's dragon powers. Chia is absorbing wizard power from around the world. We've seen it happen, Jean said. Vinod nodded. And now Chia can do things no other shadow dragon can do. Drake looked around. Like trap people in this shadow realm? And cast the whole world into a shadow and make shadow phantoms, Jean added. Yes, Vinod said. And because Chia and Aruna have a strong connection, Aruna has become filled with evil energy too. Drake shuddered. That's scary. The evil of the seed has overtaken them, Vinod said. My magic could not stop them. Then Chia banished me here to this shadow realm. The wizard's body flickered again. He began to walk away, his feet floating over the sand. Drake tapped him on the shoulder. We need more information, Drake said. When we get out of here, how do we stop Chia? Our dragon's powers don't work against him. We will never escape. But I will tell you what I know, Vinod replied. First, if wizards all over the world stop trying to perform magic, they will stop feeding Chia. He will still be strong, but he won't grow stronger. It's a good thing Jayana told the wizards in Beliron to stop using magic, Drake thought. Then there is just one dragon who can stop Chia, Vinod continued. A star dragon. I didn't know star dragons existed, Drake remarked. They live high in the sky, Vinod said, and he got a dreamy look on his face as he gazed above. Focus, please, wizard, Jean said. How can we find a star dragon? Vinod shook his head again. A star dragon must come to you, he replied. There is a scroll in my home that tells how to summon a star dragon. I was studying it when Chia banished me. Then let's get out of here and study that scroll, Jean said. Don't you think I've tried to leave here? Vinod asked. It can't be done. We're doomed. The wizard's body rippled. Vinod, do you know that you're flickering? Drake asked. Of course I know, the wizard snapped. I have been in this world so long that I am turning into a shadow. Oh no, Jean cried. The wizard sat down on a rock. It's my fate, he said. With a sigh, I accept it because of the terrible part I played in this all. But I am sorry that it is now your fate, too. It doesn't have to be, Drake said. Quick, everybody touch Worm. Jean obeyed, but Vanad just stared at Drake, blank-eyed. Drake held the wizard's hand. Worm, transport us back to the temple of the Shadow Dragon, Drake cried. Worm glowed green. Drake closed his eyes, waiting for his stomach to flip-flop. Then Drake heard Worm's voice in his head. I cannot transport out of this shadow realm. Dun dun dun. Chapter 11. The Escape. Worm says he can't transport us out of here, Drake told the others. I think it's because this is a magic space. I told you, Vanad said, and he moved away from them drifting. We're not giving up, Jean insisted. There must be some way out of this shadow realm. Drake and Jean looked around at the shadow desert. There was no sign of life in the distance. Above, the sky was covered in shadow. What if Argent tried to fly out of here? Jean asked. Vanad drifted toward them again. You cannot fly back to the real world. Only magic can bring you out of here, and that's what's left of my wizard magic is not strong enough. Suddenly, Jean's eyes lit up. She turned to Drake. It's time for the sword lesson. What? Now? Drake replied. Vanad's magic might not work, but your sword is magic, Drake. She reminded him. You created a portal with it once before, remember? Drake's eyes widened. He'd made a portal before to travel from the evil wizard Maldred's magical hideout to the Silver Lair. The sword is connected to Argent's energy, he said. Right, Jean agreed, and Argent just used his powers outside the temple of the Shadow Dragon. I think the sword can connect to that energy. Drake held the silver sword in both hands. It's worth a try, he said. He moved the sword in big circles in front of him. He made circle after circle. Finally, the air swirled with silver light, and a portal appeared. Through it, Drake could see the steps of the temple. You did it, Drake! Jean cried. Let's go! Jean and Argent jumped through. Drake and Worm followed, but Vanad did not. Drake looked back through the portal. Vanad, hurry! He urged the wizard. I cannot go back, Vanad replied, and his body flickered once more. I am a shadow now. Go. Find the Star Dragon, save Aruna and Chia, and the world. Vanad! No! Drake cried, but the wizard's body transformed into a wispy gray figure. Then the portal closed. He turned into a shadow, Drake said, still stunned. He remembered that time he had stuck himself with a magical shadow thorn. He had turned into a shadow, and it had felt very strange. I can't imagine being a shadow forever, he thought. Jean grabbed his arm. Drake, we must get to Vanad's house and find that scroll. Drake nodded, and he, Jean, Worm, and Argent headed to the wizard's home. Behind them, 12 shadow phantoms followed, reaching toward them with ghostly arms. Oh no, the phantoms again, guys. Chapter 12. Find the scroll. Drake and Jean burst into Vanad's home, while their dragons waited outside. Darpan was still there searching for clues to help his sister. Did you see Aruna? What happened? The boy asked. It's a long story, Drake replied, but we know the way to help Aruna and to Chia. Darpan, have you seen a scroll that mentions a star dragon? Jean asked. The boy rushed to the wooden chest in the corner of the room. Vanad's scrolls are in here, Darpan said. He opened the lid. Then Drake heard Worm inside his head. We are under attack. Jean, come quickly, Drake cried. He ran to the front window, and Jean followed outside. A dozen shadow phantoms zoomed toward the dragons. "What do we do now?" Drake asked out loud. "Worm can't freeze them. If Arjun and I work together, I think we can stop them," Worm told him. Drake told Jean that what Worm had said, and she nodded. "Argent, work with Worm," she yelled. She turned back to Darpan. "Find the scroll. We will protect you." "Will do," Darpan called back. Worm glowed green and Argent glowed silver. A group of shadow phantoms charged toward them. Then a blinding bright green light shone from Worm. Argent opened his wings. Whoosh! Argent's shiny wings reflected the green light onto the attacking shadow phantoms. When the dazzling glow hit them, they dissolved. "Worm and Argent did it!" Drake cheered. Behind him, he heard Darpan call out, "I found the scroll!" Drake turned to see Darpan holding a scroll. Behind Darpan, a shadow phantom floated through the wall. "Watch out!" Drake yelled. Darpan ran toward Drake, but the shadow phantom was fast. It reached toward the boy with its long, ghostly fingers. Jean jumped between Darpan and the shadow phantom. "Back, foul fiend!" she yelled, and she pushed the phantom with her right hand. Suddenly she gasped in pain. "Ah!" Almost without thinking, Drake gripped his sword. "Ah!" With a mighty cry, he brought the sword down on the shadow phantom. The creature vanished. "Thank you, Drake," Jean said. Darpan breathed out a sigh. "And thank you, Jean." "Are you okay, Jean?" Drake asked. Did the phantom hurt you?" "It's nothing," she replied. Then they all heard the beating of dragon wings. Drake, Jean, and Darpan ran outside. Worm and Argent were looking up at the sky. Aruna and Chia flew overhead. "You may have escaped the Shadow Realm," Aruna said, "but you will not escape us." Chapter 13. Help from Afar. Chia reared back his head, gearing up for an attack. Drake, Jean, and Darpan ran and ducked down behind Worm and Argent. Darpan thrust the scroll into Drake's hands. "Get out of here!" "Come with us," Drake urged. Darpan shook his head. "I cannot leave my sister." "Go, find help. I'll be okay. Aruna won't hurt me." Drake nodded. Jean already had a hand on Worm and one on Argent. Drake touched his dragon. "Worm, to the training room in Bracken," he yelled. Worm transported them back to King Roland's castle before Chia could attack. Griffith, Bo, Rory, and Anna greeted them. "Did you find the shadow dragon?" Rory asked. Drake and Jean told the story of Aruna and Chia. They explained that the shadow dragon had been cursed with great power. Drake held out the scroll. "We need to summon a star dragon," he said. "The instructions should be in this scroll." "Let us study it in the classroom," Griffith suggested. Before they could follow him, a circle of swirling golden light appeared in the training room. A boy stepped through the portal. He wore a dragon stone, a white shirt, and an orange skirt. A gold parrot sat on his shoulder. "Dharma!" Drake cried. The boy grinned as the portal closed behind him. "I sensed that you might need my help, friend," he said. "So Hema and I came." The parrot flew off Dharma's shoulder. Golden light exploded from it. When the light faded, a large, beautiful dragon stood in its place. The dragon master stared at Hema, the gold dragon, in wonder. "Nice to meet you, Dharma. I'm Bo," Bo said. "And I'm Anna. Your dragon is beautiful," Anna added. "We can use your help, Dharma," Griffith said. "But tell me, how did you create that portal?" "Hema and I have been practicing," Dharma replied. "It is easy to find energy if you know where to look." Excellent, Griffith said. Now let us study the scroll. Drake held the scroll out to Jean. You should unroll it, he said. You saved our pawn from the shadow phantom. It will be an honor, Jean replied, and she reached for the scroll. Her hand passed right through the paper. Uh-oh. She gasped and held up her hand. It flickered just like Vanad's body had. My hand! It's a shadow! She cried. Chapter 14. The Phantom's Touch. Jean's eyes widened as she stared at her hand. Griffith examined it. Your right hand does indeed appear to be a shadow, he said. Jean's face clouded. I touched the shadow phantom with this hand. When we made contact, I felt a weird shock. That's why you cried out, Drake said. Griffith frowned. I think the touch of a shadow phantom has turned Jean's hand into a shadow. Jean wiggled her fingers. What if it won't stop at my hand? What if my whole body turns into a shadow just like Vanad? We won't let that happen, Rory assured her. Bo stepped forward. Excuse me, but if the shadow phantoms were created by evil magic, then maybe Shu can help. Jean? Help you, Jean. My water dragon has a very special power. Her mist can wash away any spell. Smart thinking, Bo, Griffith said. Fetch Shu immediately. Rory and Anna, please read the scroll in the meantime. Yes, Griffith, the girls said. Rory took the scroll, and the two girls ran into the classroom. Jean was quiet, and her face was pale as she and the others waited for Bo. Drake knew she was trying to be brave. He squeezed her left hand. It'll be okay, he promised. Yes, Dharma said. All will be as it should. I can feel it. Jean took a deep breath. I know. I'll be fine with friends like you helping me. Bo led Shu, a shimmering blue water dragon, into the training room and hold out your hand, Jean, Bo instructed, and Jean obeyed. Then Bo looked at his dragon. Shu, use your healing mist. Shu closed her eyes, and a misty blue cloud floated from her mouth. The mist rained onto Jean's shadow hand. Chapter 15. The Next Move. Shu's healing mist sparkled on Jean's shadow hand. How does your hand feel? Drake whispered. It tingles, Jean replied. The gray color began to leave her hand. Jean flexed her fingers. I think it's working, she said hopefully. Then her knees wobbled, and Drake steadied her. Oh, no! Did I do something wrong? Bo asked. You and Shu did well, Bo. The shadow phantom's touch has weakened Jean, Griffith explained. He touched her right hand, which now looked solid and firm. She is cured, but she needs rest. Yes, rest, please, Jean agreed. And thank you, Bo and Shu, for healing me. Rory and Anna ran out of the classroom. We learned something, Rory announced. In order to summon a star dragon from the sky, we need a light dragon. This book says we can find a light dragon on the Pickland Islands, Anna finished. Griffith paced as he thought of a plan. First, we must stop feeding Chia with power, he said. Every wizard in the world must stop using magic. Rory, fly to Beliaron with the news. Anna, go to Aragon to inform Diego. Then ask Carlos and the lightning dragon to help you spread the news. Rory and Anna grinned. We're on it, Rory cheered. Then she and Anna gave Griffith the book and the scroll and raced to the dragon caves. Bo and Jean will stay with me to see what we can learn about the star dragons, Griffith continued. And Drake, at dawn, you and Dharma shall head out to find the light dragon. Drake looked at Dharma. Your senses were right, Dharma, he said. We do need your help. Dharma closed his eyes, and after a few seconds he opened them. I have something for you, Dharma replied in his soft, calm voice. Then he took an object from his pocket and gave it to Drake. Drake studied it. It was a disc made of gold. "Thank you," he said. "It's very pretty." "It is also very useful, and you will need it," Dharma said. "I sense that this will be a very challenging mission." Dun, dun, dun. We're left on a cliffhanger, Apollo and Talia. What do you think of that? We don't know how it's going to work out.
Yeah.
The shadow dragon is still shrouding the world. It's an iron curtain of shadows. Will we starve? I don't know. We'll have to find out in the next book. Do we even have the next book?
The next book, I think, is up at the house.
Oh, it's on its way. I think it's on its way.
No, we have to read the Star Dragon also.
Oh, okay. Well,
There's a Star Dragon that
we will see you in book 24. And what do we say, guys?
Adios!
Adios!